What if the most advanced visual effects technology wasn't just used to escape reality, but to confront it, to reclaim history, to give voice to the silenced? We are proud to propose an AI and VFX approach to revolutionize African storytelling with the groundbreaking project Kayowa, a 3D AI miniseries based on true 17th century DRCongo events. Princess Kayowa's story, a love triangle, a prophecy, a kingdom at risk, is more than fantasy. It's cultural preservation. Using AI and 4D Gaussian splatting, we are rebuilding pre-colonial Congo, its sacred forests and untold histories.
So this story is actually based on a true event happened in the 17th century in my family by ancestors. And for people who don't really know Central Africa, that's the period before 12 days before Ferdinand Magellan went along the coast. We started that project because I wanted, with the book of my aunt, who wrote the first story, I wanted to explore actually the past and the civilization a bit, and the reason why a lot of women in Congo, especially Luba and Lunda women, are suffering a lot in Congo, and rape has become a weapon against women. And I started after the war there was, because I'm from Congo apart, I started to investigate, and I realized that actually it has become a weapon because, traditionally speaking, due to that story of Kayowa Bayombo, the punishment for women, which called the Chibau, was actually the public rape. So that's how it became, from that time till this day. It became something really bad for women's rights. So I wanted, as a Congolese person, and because I recently reconnected to my roots, to go really deep on that and try to show to people that you can have tradition, but you can make them evolve for the best of people. So yeah, it's about the story of the Kingdom of Congo from the 17th century, and about the love triangle which turned really bad, and starting a big war between 12 tribes. And so that at the end of the war, there was no army and no one in the Congo to actually fight the Portuguese and the Christian. So basically, that's what happened. That's the consequence. Does it come back to the beginning? No, I hope not. Yes. Sorry, guys. Bit of a glitch. It's a bit weird. Okay. So yeah, this is the overview of what we're going to talk today. So first of all, to actually go to that project, it was a bit difficult because it was really, really expensive. And there was not that much of knowledge about how pre-colonial Congo was, actually. For two reasons, essentially, because the first wave of colonization destroyed everything and emptied the Congo Empire from half of its people, from the slavery. Mostly Angola, Congo, Benguela, and Mulhoju. And then the second wave was the Belgium colonization, which killed in total 35 million people in 50 years for rubber genocide, so the tires, and copper genocide, the electricity. So, with that, I decided to go deep and deep and deep and observe it without hatred or anything, just observing how it was and try to understand what happened. And so here we're gonna go to compare a different pipeline, because I looked at different pipeline, and according to the one I know, the traditional one, I couldn't achieve it. It was way too expensive, way too many people, like booking 20 people to travel in Africa, so like 7 places and stuff in a country which was at war at the time. No one would want to do. So I started to buy some drones, and I basically learned Pix4D, and I started to program that and send in Africa. And I've got a lot of family over there, and some of my family and friends. And Jeffrey Mwangi, my associate on a business in Africa, they did take a lot of those image. For the rest, I bought some footage when I didn't have. The idea was to recreate actually the Congo how it was in the 16th century, which is quite difficult. So we're going to see that, the virtual scouting, the environment and terrain creation with the software Houdini and all the tools for terrain creation and environment scattering. Then the performance capture. So because I'm working on the proof of concept, which has a performance capture for the character and some traditional animation. And of course, we're going to see the layout assembly, the hybrid type of rendering pipeline, with mixing traditional 3D render and AI rendering. And then after the sort of breakthrough, my friend and really good friend Andrew Haldezen and myself did make the past recent months about how to go from generative AI to directable AI. And it's not at all that simple. But it's doable, but it's not simple. So, and at the end, we're going to talk about the most recent out of the box, which is the PBR Gaussian splatting. So the possibility with a Gaussian splatter to be able to actually feed the points with shading per point, and then having them to behave more or less like the traditional assets we know. So that's just a basic analysis after years of work about the traditional pipeline. So of course the Pro it's really reliable, it's really robust, and you can actually achieve anything. I worked with several people in this room. We worked on crazy project, and every time that would deliver. The down is most of the time it's really slow, and there's a lot of inertia, and it's really difficult to mobilize on a project which is not necessarily appealing to all the producer or all the big studios. So. Yeah, that said, we're going to go to see the next type of pipeline, which is the generative workflow, like the newest one and the most recent one. So, I did put on that the Union video because I worked a lot with their model of Tencent and Alibaba. I worked quite a lot with their model. Like the Pro R, it's extremely fast. It does some really impressive results, but the problem is actually the stability, the robustness. So that makes it really difficult to apply and scale in production. It's really, and it took us about a year to really understand each step and how, with those steps, we can now apply that to a normal VFX pipeline, or more traditional, and to make it way faster, way more optimized. But nothing comes up with clicking a button and ta-da, it works. That's not how it works. So, then we came up with Eric Paré from Xangle Studio, Andrew Aldezen and myself. We came up with that new pipeline, which would take base and roots in a traditional VFX pipeline. And since working at Xangle Studio, we have rigs of 900 cameras in total. We had 400 2 years ago. Now we go to a larger number. And the idea is, because Eric is a photographer who loves multi-view photography, that we use that with Andrew to actually create LoRa. So that's model of training we based essentially on data sets. And the idea was to make sure that you can train points or images, something, to have classified LoRa and make sure that you can apply them through Conveying UI to different things. Most of what I've been working on with the LoRa was, first of all, the reconstruction of places which don't exist anymore. So I went to several places in Africa and I trained a lot of image to actually, from the notes of the Portuguese Naval Marine Museum in Porto, and from Angola, Brazil, and South Africa, all those data and all those story helped me to recreate that. So here the interesting part is you have iteration and loops, which allows you to actually rapid prototype something in AI and use the result actually as training and go as iteration while you would build and finesse the official result that you're going to deliver to your SUP or your client. So it's mostly using AI tool within a VFX pipeline than having Gen AI opposing a traditional VFX. So for me, it's like a bit head over heels. So one is driving and really fast, and the other is thinking and make it beautiful. So, so we're gonna start by the virtual scouting. So this location here is actually a Maluku River at the northeast of Congo River, close to Kinshasa. That was one of the first locations. And we ended up finding really randomly a small village that we actually couldn't go. I mean, my family, because I was not there, they couldn't actually go there because there was no road. So when they find that, they've been filming only with the smartphone. And actually, we used actually AI multi-view to reproduce actually each of the house. The interesting part is we had actually the drone data, so we could compare the AI model rebuilt, the robustness and the triangulation and the accuracy of the model. We did compare it to the actual photogrammetry to make sure that we were good. So this is a map, as I was telling you, about like Congo. And basically, the story we're talking about is happening in here, in Kasai, just at the center. And to rebuild that, because the Congo Empire was going from the Kivu, North Kivu, all the way to Angola. Before the Portuguese came. And basically to reproduce how the nature, how the habitat, the clothes and everything, we had basically to virtual scout all that area. Because a lot of places have been destroyed, removed, changed through industry, because a lot of mine have been destroying actually the landscape, so we couldn't find anything. So that was really an interesting part and an interesting use of AI to recreate that. So next, so we continue our visit. So in our story, so that's the traditional map at the time of the 17th century, where the story of Kayowa and the war happened. And in here, you have actually two different territories of two families fighting. It's a bit sort of like Helen of Troy, basically, more or less, type of story. So for that, to recreate that, actually, we used Houdini, and we used actually EarthMesh HDA to be able to capture at 1 arc second most of the basic location, and from that, I used Google Earth Studio to make fly plan in format KMZ that you can download. And after, the cool thing is actually you can load them in a drone. So that's the cool part. So here, that's the place actually where Kayowa was from, Chilundu Merod. So that's what's left of it. And the most interesting part is that was, at the time, that was looking like at the back when you see the rainforest at the back. Everything was looking like that. But nowadays, you have almost nothing left. So here we went through video referencing and aerial documentation by scanning with drone on the hair and actually reconstructing things from the ground as well. So here is like some of the shots I did envisage for the proof of concept. So which are actually several position framing, and I could position that correctly and accurately from the LiDAR at exactly from that village of Tanini. And so that's one of the house, like a typical Luba culture, because the Luba are actually extending from Central Africa all the way to Okavango and Botswana. So it's quite large and quite diverse. So it was still a way to find actually a lot of small elements to rebuild our environment. So that's the small piece of the drone footage that helped to recreate actually the riverbed and the sort of like naked vegetation. It's not really easy to find those kind of place where there's no electricity, where there's no road, and everything is more or less pristine. And that place is actually close to Kinshasa. So that's the funny part, because you can still have some places like that where there's almost nothing. So here is a different place. It's a gorilla park at the border between DRC and Congo Brazzaville. And that place is really good because there's like no human being living there. So you can cruise on the river, but there's actually no people there. So that was really easy to take that as a base to recreate the environment. So that's the south part of the reservation here. And yes, I did lose a couple drones doing that. So up here is actually from a typical Kasai village. We did starting to rebuild actually Gaussian splat, because the point was, when I wanted to recreate the terrain, actually Gaussian splat was better than geometry, in a sense that actually the thing is, it's more or less the same thing, but the real difference is actually that if you make a photogrammetry of trees, you only have blobs. And while if you sort the points, the sparse points, you can actually easily remove actually all the vegetation, more or less, and make a half transform based on all the points, which is going to give you a flat plane. So that's quite easy to separate, and you can actually segment along with the color in Agisoft Metashape. You can actually make the segmentation based on color. So you would separate completely your scan before actually starting to work. So that was like a big game changer, because before, and most of you would know, when you have a LiDAR, you have a blob of a city, a blob of whatever, but it's never segmented and never separate. And therefore you would spend 1 or 2 weeks or a month in modeling for poor modelers to split all this. So that is actually like a large collection of more or less where my people have been to capture the environment for Kayowa. So they've really been to the four corner of RDC, and the Republic of Congo is really, really big. It's like big, like, I don't know, like maybe 8-9 times UK. So, and those people are living off $25 a month. So that was a lot of work, a lot of dedication. So, and that's the oldest photograph we could manage to find, based on mostly on the Exposition Universelle of Liège, sorry, and Antwerp in 1897, when the first people from the Force Publique took a lot of Congolese and brought them into Belgium to expose them as the trophy for the King Leopold. So that's part of the last remaining visual artifact that you can find, because most of the people have been killed and destroyed, and that's only what's left of that time and era. So this is actually a small test. Sorry for the compression, but it gets better after. So that was just a small test to see from how much with a really not good quality drone and smartphone, until how close you could reconstruct the data. It's not about the sharpness of the Gaussian splat, but it's about how much you can rebuild and how much you can match procedural trees and nature to match actually the reality. So here again, that's on the Polycam Pro. That's just exporting all the segmented part of a Gaussian splatter to be able in Houdini to make a scene assembly just with Gaussian splatter and not necessarily with geometry. So that was just a small example. So same here. So that's the second pass of the reconstruction. So for the Gaussian splatter points, we actually did derive actually a geometry, which was now quite easier because, as you could see, and if you remember the location we saw by the river, there was like a lot of bushes and stuff. And here with the Gaussian splat converted to a geo, you not really suffering the blobbiness of the terrain. So here is actually the first asset mass into Unreal. So that's part of collections of assets we bought and collection of assets we actually scanned and photogrammetrized from Congo and from Gabon. And this is like the first setup. On the top right, you have the environment distribution in Houdini. On the bottom left, the same environment exported from Houdini as USD, imported into Unreal. And the bottom right was the first import, wouldn't consider the texture, so we had to write tools to automatize the Material X texture assignment to be able to distribute the texture directly into Unreal. So here, so now we pass to the terrain creation, like the virtual terrain, not only the scouting or the Gaussian splat, but actually the real work. So here, as you can see, so we actually converted a lot of 3D footage to make the terrain, and then we used mostly for the vegetation a combination of Blender and Houdini, because first of all, I didn't have that budget to start to buy a collection of SP3, which are a couple $1,000. So I used basically the generator of Blender, and we wrote script to make bridge between Blender and Houdini. So which would, as you would assetize your data, you send it to Houdini, and you actually create directly the arc of composition for your USD, which is quite useful. And for all the rest of the asset, like the rocks and everything, we basically relied on Megascan. So basically, to make actually the whole thing really affordable. So yep. So that's just the small demo about like how we went about with one of a good friend, Jean-Joël Bambuc, who's from Frames Focus, and at the early stage, actually, he helped me to set up a terrain of 100 kilometers square, which was actually the whole part of the Luba Kingdom. Yeah. And the interesting part is we used actually all the out-of-the-box tools to only do environment work. We didn't use any of the custom development. Like in Houdini 20.5 and 21, we only use that. Of course, some Python script, PyTorch, and but mostly that was only Houdini for that. So that's now the assembly starting to get together. And as you can see, we have actually the collection of the trees, which are replacing slowly the Gaussian splat. Another stuff which is really good as well with the Gaussians is actually you can collect points to actually make your scattering on it. So that's kind of really useful because that gives you an indication of the color at the base, at the middle, and at the top of the trees, and the distribution. And so, yep, so that's at the end, that's the collection of the trees we had. On that, for that test, we used actually Ion Pipeline. And but we evolved and we moved on from that to only use native tools inside Houdini. And thanks to Bertrand Cabrol from the Yard, who make like a really good training on how to make pipeline tools with Houdini. Yeah, I'm going a bit fast because I don't have that much time, and we just only had the terrain and we have characters to see. Here, same like we basically that's the same work going on, and starting to make the different LODs and making sure that we could go always keeping the cross compatibility between Unreal and Houdini. The point was to be able to distribute points, getting those points instancers all the way to PCG to Unreal, changing the terrain, making a lot of, and leveraging a lot of the real time, because I was just on my own doing all this. So I couldn't really rely on other artists, because I was doing that on my time off, actually. Not, after I'll tell you more about the project. And so the idea was to be able to leverage real time in Unreal back and forth, because it's cool to set stuff and go to Unreal, but most of the time you can't basically come back to Houdini. It's quite complicated. So we actually had to sort out a way to do it. And on that note, we as well adopted Twinmotion, because Twinmotion is a really good package, and to actually create environment and send that environment into Unreal first and then to Houdini. Next, yes, so that's the terrain now. And so this terrain is actually made of several LiDAR. So from the aerial view that you saw, I think it's really straightforward for everyone who does environmental map painting, the several LiDAR lined up and a height field. So like there's nothing really new about it. And this is actually the village of, the layout of the village of Chilundu that we recreated from the 17th century. So, and as you can see, like everything is really, really Houdini standards. There's like nothing fancy about it, like literally out of the box, and off you go. So now we're gonna jump to the performance capture, which is one of the other big topics that I've been exploring for that project. So thanks to X-Angle Studio, who is actually a photogrammetry studio that I work with. Eric Paré and Kim did trust me enough to go from a DSLR, regular Canon DSLR camera, non-gen locked, to start to do, first of all, 3D capture, then 4D capture, then animated Gaussian capture. So that was a bit of the challenge of last year to be able to know, would we succeed? And if we were not good, from how far the delta was to have something really, really good. So that's why we used actually mostly the help of Alexei Pasomansky from Agisoft Metashape, a good help of Epic Game as well for Reality Scan, and all the rest was like a full Houdini, like from the modeling to procedural to layout, look dev, and even the splat training, because I show you after how we actually completely created a chain of capture within Houdini without having to go out to other softwares. Well, so those are the people of Xangle. Eric and Kim are really amazing, wonderful people. And from our collaboration, we went a lot in R&D. And from a traditional basic DSLR rig, we went to a synchronized rig and then light LED controlled rig to capture people. So that is basically the way we went, we are going, not we went because it's not finished, the way we are going actually for the project Kayowa. So that character is actually a witch, which is a shapeshifter. And the interesting part was to have a Quebecois performer actually impersonating an African demon. And that was really interesting because Kim is actually a performer who's really good in dancing, and she's been traveling around the world and she knows a lot about culture. So that was really interesting to see from how much it would, in a certain sense, avoid the kind of like blackface, because that's not the topic. The topic was to see from how much people were interested in that story and wanted to participate at their level. So yeah, I really, really precise that because I had a lot of comment about that. So and yeah, so that's basically the rig and the material we use actually at Xangle to shoot during a day and a half, and we managed to get 52 shots in 4K, like shot and reconstructed. And
Je pense qu'on n'avait pas testé dans cette station-là avec ces flashs. Parfait. Ça, c'est pas mal.
So yeah, I'm going to pass it again. So you see basically the whole workflow. I'm a bit sorry, it didn't go exactly in the same order, but so you basically see exactly what we've been doing. We've been having the performance of the actors shoot from the torso with 110 camera with a cross polarization and all that, like people must understand what I mean. And then we had the body actors performance in the rig of 200 cameras with the LED, which was mimicking the HDR lighting conditions. And then we had the volumetric 4D reconstruction. And from the points, we decided to either go to train on post-shot or other tools, because at the beginning that was just post-shot and we developed other tools for that. And from that, we went to 3D render result. So this is actually the 4D Gaussian splatter coming out from the rig of Xangle and from Metashape and Houdini. The synchronized shoot. So yeah, so that's now how from all those shoot and all that result. So that's how we did actually to make a complete workflow within Houdini using TOPS, and the possibility with the really, really minimum scripting, because the programming would come after. So that was really for a minimum of scripting to use actually the PDG and all the software to be able to run within Houdini. So the Chikulu Chikaji is like the shapeshifter demon. So as a character, you had like the 3D performance, the scan, the African mask and dressing. So we shot with the in costume within the rig, so we could reproduce easily the material, the cloth, etc., and have good references of all the props. And then we actually had, as you can see, like the animation and stuff. So, and then it was recorded, and we actually transposed the voice into the model of the demon first to see if everything was moving as Kim, and after we went on and on and on to actually create this character of the film. And as you can see, we still use Houdini for driving photogrammetry, reconstruction, and training. And those stage passed, we use Houdini for the clothes, the hair, and all the normal CG work. So we actually use effectively some of AI, but mostly is within the Houdini pipeline. So another thing is actually the long exposure performance, because in the film, the long exposure are actually figuring the spirits and the dead people. So the interesting part is actually a long exposure time can't be captured in 3D because it doesn't exist, and just only for the photograph. So we managed to find a way to train the point and to, with post-shots first and after with the NVIDIA tools, to actually recreate the 3D volumetry of a long exposure time. So that was really exciting. And here, that's the performance of Kim, which is the birth of the demon. And we actually use with a PDG top and a mocapade, a part of a mesh capade. I don't know if people are familiar with. It's a AI volumetric and motion capture. The interesting part is actually a mesh capade is giving you a procedural model, which is really, really close to the model of MetaHuman, and which goes completely lined up with the whole Apex rig of a side effect. So that was quite handy to have. So now we get into the pipeline and the layout assembly. So that's basically the different steps we took, which are sort of as like as a normal way to do environment. So, which is like the normal instancing with PCG, like Houdini instancing to PCG and back and forth, because that was really important to keep actually being able to go to Unreal to do things and bring back things into Houdini. But first, setting up properly and correctly the composition arc for USD. And basically, that was most of the work was about that, about being really organized and make sure that everything's scene build, localized, versionized all the time. And you could be able to send a part of your job into Unreal and back and forth to address some, for example, some little detail and a lot of instancing. It's easier to handle that in Unreal. But at the end of the day, you would send back the result of your instancing back to Houdini. So the final assembly includes the terrain, as you could see, from the 100 kilometers square, the instanced vegetation, instanced rock, the Gaussian splash characters, traditional rig characters for the demon, and the effects and volume. So as you can see, it's not that much different as a traditional pipeline. So, and next to it here, you have like the loop between Solaris and Unreal. So, which is again not really surprising, because all the tools and everything is there to do it. So, so that's the result, first result of the assembly. And so that's part of the scan we made and part of the collection of scan we bought, of part of so the village that you saw before that we actually scanned and used the AI to make multi-view to 3D. And then we made that, we coupled that with actually a collection of Kid Bash that we actually adapted to match actually the African village. So that's, again, as I told you, we were really a few number of people to do all this. So we couldn't really afford having 10 people doing the terrain, 5 people the texture, 2 people the scattering. That was not the budget for that. So here, so we now are getting to the point where we're going to Solaris now to assemble and start to light with a Karma. So again, standard and traditional, nothing really fancy, except all the tools like the AI tools were aimed to have a really small team producing their job like that in a really short time, without doing that much of overtime, basically. Yeah. So another. Another thing. I'm gonna actually put some of those scenes. Actually, as I said to the team at Side Effects, I'm gonna put some of the scenes actually available. So if people are interested to see, you guys can have a look. So there's nothing. At the contrary, with Andrew, we developing Cataverse library. It's like a long series of tools for Houdini, from 360 Pano to image-based modeling to scan. And we're using that almost on a daily basis. And it's open source, so we're always happy to share with people and doing things like that. So yeah, another test of the nighttime lighting to see that everything was in order. So that's the basic assembly of collections of a lot of things. As I told you, a collection that we bought, and after we use Houdini to shuffle instance and take part of the 5 traditional village and mix and match to have as much variety as possible. So same, like nothing really, just to show the simplicity of the model compared to the image you saw at the beginning, because everything was actually CG video to video, everything you saw at the beginning. Like nothing was filmed, basically. So again, those traditional, and I think this one was really interesting because it was a free model for TurboSquid, but it was looking exactly like the Pende tribe in the Olomami, the pygmy tribe who live in the rainforest. So we took that as a base to create a kit bash of 20 different models as well. And so that here is part as well of part of a kit we bought, part of a Megascan, and part of actually assets like we did scan ourselves. So to make collections of enough data and enough richness that you can actually populate a market, a city, a house, and everything. So here is like the same as I told you, using the tool, the base tool in Blender to organize the data was quite handy. And we add, instead of having just one tree that goes a turntable and another tree goes a turntable, we actually decided to work as a bit like the nature goes. So you have one type of plant which actually grow in area and not as just one plant that you put. And that did really, really help us to have those category of plants out of Blender into Solaris, that we could actually create rules of which plant are actually going with which plant. And we had actually all the samples from Congo to Kenya to Gabon to actually match. So that was really, really easy. Really easy, relatively speaking, of course. So that's one of the first tests. One of the first tests of the scatter. So now we're gonna jump to the funny part, the one I prefer. 2 minutes left. Okay, good. We're almost done. So that's just the hybrid rendering. So I'm gonna go like really fast. So basically, so that's the idea, to have a first pass of rapid prototyping rendered or play blast, and use actually AI renders with a Conveying UI and Houdini, and use those data as a LoRa training for the Conveying UI to make iteration on different parts that we want to improve. So I will try to go faster. So actually the mocap paid workflow. So as you can see, and in really bad light condition, we managed to get really good result, which were completely editable and fine-tunable into Houdini, because actually the rig was actually compatible with the Apex rig. So the big breakthrough was actually how to make Gen AI directable. So that was really interesting, because that new workflow allows you to actually create from a normal assets and a layout, an image, and you would go image to a video, as you all know. But where the cool thing is, when you have Conveying UI and Houdini, is every, let's say you take a person and you would make an image to video. So you're gonna have a video sequence, and from that video sequence, we actually using the video sequence to break it down back to image to 3D per sequence, which is inverse 40. So you end up having a 3D scene and a 3D model with animated CG character coming from an AI video. So, and that is actually the big breakthrough, because from that point, we have 6 LoRa's, and they always, the LoRa we use are for emotion, intention, and expression. And from that, you can start actually from those things. If you have someone who does that much of facial expression, you can exaggerate them, create blend shapes, store the blend shape, re-inject into the model, and so on until it's good. And the configure workflow. So which now is plugged with Houdini, because that was still at the version 20.5, and now we now at the version 21. And for that example, I really thank my friend Felipe Confora, who helped, formerly from one of us, who helped us to actually figure out what was the actual good preset and how you would interfere with your model and stuff. So that was really, really interesting. And that allows us to actually, every time we would make image to video, we could, as the inverse, create the CG model relative to that image. And again, I'm gonna probably share the notes. It's not that complicated, but if you guys want to have a look, it's all good. And I think so, yeah, the second one, which is a tiny bit different because we're using some different type of iteration. And I'm gonna jump to the next. Yep, so that's the character of Muanza, who's actually one of the warlord of the story. And he was actually made with the same type of, so it was made actually with the same type of technique. From like a 3D model to actually video to video, and then a photorealistic character based on scan. So same goes for Mubikai. So that's basically the fight between Muanza and Mubikai. And the idea was really interesting because you could, from a basic person who gets scanned at X angle, you could generate actually from concept a new person, and you can actually derive an inverse animation of him. And so that's for the first early test with actually the 3D model reprojected with the AI video.
Je suis Muanza, prince héritier au trône du chef Kajukulu. Mon alliance avec Kayowa, la princesse de Bayombo, va fortifier nos deux clans, les rendre plus puissants et les faire prospérer.
Yeah, that was one of the tests of the, yeah, it's time. So I'm done. And thank you very much. I'm out of the time.